What began as a routine promotional appearance turned into one of television's most explosive confrontations when Brad Pitt challenged Jimmy Kimmel's credibility live on air, triggering an unprecedented meltdown that stunned millions of viewers. The studio lights burned with their usual intensity as Jimmy Kimmel straightened his tie and flashed his familiar smirk at the camera. The evening was expected to be just another stop on the Hollywood promotional circuit, with Brad Pitt scheduled to talk about his latest passion, a project focused on sustainable housing initiatives. The audience hummed with anticipation, phones already raised, waiting for one of cinema's biggest stars to step onto the stage. Pitt emerged from backstage with his trademark easy confidence, waving to the crowd before settling into the guest chair. The opening banter moved along smoothly enough, jokes about aging gracefully, nods to past films, and the standard late-night rhythm both men had navigated countless times before. But beneath Kimmel's jovial exterior, something felt off. His questions carried a sharp edge, a subtle aggression absent from their previous encounters. "So, Brad, you're really passionate about this housing thing now?" Kimmel asked, his tone already tinged with mockery. "Tell me, is this another one of those celebrity causes where you show up for photos and disappear once the cameras stop rolling?" Pitt's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, his practiced Hollywood smile faltering for just a beat. "Actually, Jimmy, I've been working on this for over 3 years. We've built homes for more than 200 families so far. It's not a publicity stunt." Right, Kimmel replied, nodding as his eyes glinted with something that looked suspiciously like malice. "Just like when you were saving New Orleans, right? How did that work out exactly?" The audience sensed the tension rising, laughter growing nervous and uneven. This was no longer playful ribbing. It felt personal, calculated, and increasingly uncomfortable. Pitt leaned forward slightly, keeping his voice measured despite the provocation. The Make It Right Foundation built over 100 homes in the lower Ninth Ward. Families who lost everything in Katrina got a second chance. I'm proud of that work." "Oh, you're proud," Kimmel echoed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Even though half those houses are falling apart now. Even though families are suing your foundation. Tell me, Brad, how does it feel to build someone hope just to watch it crumble?" The studio went silent. The exchange had crossed every line of professional courtesy, moving far beyond typical late-night banter into something darker and deeply personal. Pitt's jaw tightened, and for the first time in the interview, his movie star composure began to crack. "Jimmy, I think you need to check your facts," Pitt said, his voice controlled but carrying a clear warning. "We worked with architects, engineers, and the community to create innovative, sustainable housing. Yes, there were issues with a few homes, and we addressed them. But to sit here and suggest we exploited people suffering for publicity is not just wrong, it's disgusting." Kimmel leaned back in his chair, clearly savoring the reaction he had provoked. Disgusting. That's a strong word from someone who walked away from his foundation when things got complicated. "You know what I think, Brad? I think you're just another Hollywood hypocrite using charity to feel better about living in a bubble." The audience was now completely silent, aware they were witnessing something unprecedented. Several people in the front rows looked genuinely uneasy, while others held their phones higher, realizing they might be recording television history. Pitt stood abruptly, his famous calm finally giving way to visible anger. "You know what, Jimmy? I came here tonight to talk about helping people find affordable housing, to use whatever platform I have to make a difference. But instead, you want to tear down legitimate, charitable work for cheap laughs and ratings. Sit down." "Brad," Kimmel said, his commanding tone only intensifying Pitt's frustration. "No, I won't sit down," Pitt fired back, his voice rising for the first time. "You want to know what's disgusting? Using your show to attack people who are actually trying to make a difference while you sit behind that desk, making jokes about other people's struggles." The confrontation spiraled beyond anyone's control. Backstage, producers scrambled to figure out how to salvage the situation. Kimmel's face flushed as he realized his guest wasn't backing down. He had clearly expected Pitt to absorb the attacks with typical Hollywood grace, but instead found himself facing someone unwilling to be bullied on national television. The host's trademark smugness began to twist into something far uglier raw. Indignation at having his authority openly challenged. "You know what your real problem is, Brad?" Kimmel snapped, dropping any pretense of professionalism. "You think that because you're a movie star, you can lecture the rest of us about morality. But we all know what kind of man you really are." The implication hung in the air like poison. Everyone in the studio understood exactly what Kimmel was alluding to: the highly publicized divorce, the custody battles, the tabloid speculation that had dominated headlines for years. It was a kind of personal attack that violated every unwritten rule of celebrity interviews. Pitt's eyes turned cold. "Are you seriously going to sit there and bring up my family on your show, on live television?" "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking," Kimmel shot back, clearly intoxicated by his own sense of power. "You parade around as this humanitarian while your own house was falling apart. Maybe you should focus on your own problems before trying to fix everyone else's." The audience was now stunned into complete silence. Several people visibly cringed, realizing they were witnessing a potentially correcting moment for someone they just weren't sure who. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every uncomfortable second as two of Hollywood's most recognizable figures clashed in what felt more like a street fight than a talk show interview. "My family is off limits," Pitt said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Whatever issues you have with me, you leave my children out of this." But Kimmel had clearly passed the point of no return, drunk on his own perceived cleverness and the adrenaline of the moment. "Oh, now you care about protecting your kids. Interesting timing." The words landed like a physical blow. Pitt took a step toward the desk, his hands clenching into fists. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the confrontation might turn physical. Security personnel near the stage tensed, ready to intervene if necessary. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Pitt said, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. "You sit in this studio every night making jokes about people's lives, treating real pain as entertainment. You're everything that's wrong with this industry." Kimmel stood up behind his desk, trying to reclaim some height advantage. "Everything wrong with the industry? That's rich coming from someone who stopped." Pitt cut him off with such force that Kimmel actually stepped back. "Just stop talking. You've already said enough." The studio was dead silent, except for the hum of the cameras. Even the band members looked uneasy, unsure whether to intervene or simply hope the nightmare would end. This was no longer television. It was a public destruction unfolding in real time. "You want to know what's wrong with Hollywood?" Pitt continued, his voice gaining strength. "It's people like you who think entertainment means destroying others for ratings. You've turned cruelty into comedy and convinced yourself you're clever for it." Kimmel's composure was completely shattered now. The confident host who had opened the evening was gone, replaced by someone clearly in over his head. "You can't talk to me like that on my own show," he stammered. "Watch me," Pitt replied. The two words carried the weight of a declaration of war. Pitt moved closer to Kimmel's desk, his presence commanding the entire studio. The host, who moments earlier had reveled in his perceived dominance, now looked genuinely shaken as he faced the full force of Pitt's anger. "You think this is funny?" Pitt demanded, gesturing toward the audience. "You think these people came here to watch you destroy someone's reputation for entertainment? This isn't comedy, Jimmy. This is character assassination." Kimmel tried to regain control, forcing a nervous laugh. "Come on, Brad. You're being a little dramatic, don't you think? It's just late-night television. Just late-night television." Pitt shot back, his composure now completely gone. "You just attacked my parenting, my charity work, and my personal life on national television, and you want to brush it off as entertainment? The audience was transfixed, watching what felt like a real-time career implosion. Several people in the front rows were recording everything on their phones, already aware that this footage would generate millions in social media engagement. The band members sat frozen, their instruments silent as the confrontation consumed the studio. "Look, maybe I went a little too far," Kimmel said, his tone suggesting damage control rather than genuine remorse. "But you have to admit, your foundation did have some problems." "No," Pitt cut him off sharply. "You don't get to walk this back now. You made your choice when you decided to use people's suffering as a punchline. When you brought my children into this." Backstage, producers were in full panic mode. The show's executive producer frantically tried to communicate with the control room, gesturing wildly for them to cut to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling, capturing every explosive moment of what was rapidly becoming the most controversial interview in late-night history. Kimmel's desperation grew more obvious. "Brad, why don't you sit back down and we can—" "I'm not sitting down," Pitt interrupted, his voice echoing through the studio. "I'm not playing your game anymore. You invited me here under false pretenses and then ambushed me with personal attacks. That's not hosting. That's predatory behavior." The word predatory hung in the air like an accusation that couldn't be taken back. Kimmel's face went pale, realizing Pitt had just used language that would define this confrontation in every news report and social media post that followed. "That's completely unfair," Kimmel protested, though his voice lacked conviction. "I'm just doing my job as a host. Your job." Pitt laughed bitterly. "Your job is to attack guests who come here in good faith. Your job is to exploit personal tragedy for ratings. If that's your job, then you're everything wrong with this business." The studio audience fell completely silent, sensing they were witnessing something that would be discussed and analyzed for years. Some looked horrified, others fascinated, but all understood they were watching two careers potentially unravel in real time. Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Look, Brad, maybe we both got a little heated. Why don't we take a breath?" "No," Pitt said firmly. "There's no walking this back. You showed everyone exactly who you are tonight. You're a bully who hides behind comedy to justify cruelty. You use your platform to tear people down instead of building them up." The accusation landed like a sledgehammer. Kimmel stood behind his desk, visibly shaking now, any pretense of control completely gone. The confident host who had opened the evening mocking his guests' charitable work now faced the destruction of his own reputation. "You can't," Kimmel began. But Pitt was already moving toward the edge of the stage. "Watch me," he said over his shoulder, his voice carrying across the stunned silence of the studio. He paused at the edge of the stage and turned back one final time. The cameras captured every detail of his expression: disappointment, mixed with disgust and something close to pity. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Jimmy?" Pitt said, his voice steady, controlled, and devastating. "I actually used to respect what you did. I thought you were one of the good ones in this business. But tonight, you've shown everyone you're just another person who confuses meanness with wit." Kimmel stood frozen behind his desk, his mouth opening and closing without words. The host who had begun the evening ready to tear down his guest was now fully exposed. His cruelty laid bare for millions to see. The studio lights that once felt warm now seemed harsh and unforgiving. "Brad, please," Kimmel stammered, but there was nothing left to say. The damage was complete, irreversible, and entirely of his own making. Pitt shook his head slowly. "No, Jimmy, you made your choice tonight. You chose to attack my family, my work, and my character. For what? A few laughs, some viral moments. You sold your soul for ratings, and everyone watching knows it." The audience remained absolutely silent, fully aware they had witnessed something unprecedented. Several people were openly recording, knowing the footage would be dissected and discussed for years to come. The band members sat motionless, their instruments forgotten. As they watched the complete destruction of their host's credibility. You want to know what real character looks like? Pitt continued, his voice gaining strength. It's continuing to help people, even when cynics like you mock the effort. It's showing up for communities that need rebuilding, even after the cameras stop rolling. It's protecting your family's privacy when hosts try to exploit your pain for entertainment. Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to interrupt. Brad, I think you're overreacting. Overreacting. Pitt's laugh was sharp and bitter. You attacked my children on national television, and you think I'm overreacting. That tells everyone everything they need to know about who you really are. The words lingered in the air like a final verdict. Backstage, producers had completely abandoned any effort to salvage the situation. This was beyond editing or spin. It was live television at its most raw and unforgiving. Pitt turned and looked directly into the main camera, addressing the audience at home rather than the man who had ambushed him. To everyone watching tonight, remember that celebrities are human beings with families, feelings, and flaws. We don't exist for your entertainment at any cost. We deserve the same basic respect you would want for yourselves. He then turned back to Kimmel one last time. And to you, Jimmy, I hope someday you remember what it feels like to be a decent human being. Because tonight, you forgot completely. With that, Pitt walked off the stage with quiet dignity, leaving behind a studio frozen in stunned silence and a host whose career had just unraveled on live television. Kimmel stood alone behind his desk as the weight of his actions finally settled in, and the reality of what he had done began to sink in. The cameras continued rolling for several more seconds, capturing Kimmel's devastated expression before finally cutting to commercial. But the damage was already done. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation spread across social media, racking up millions of views and overwhelmingly supportive reactions to Pitt's composed response to Kimball's unprofessional conduct. The incident sparked immediate, industry-wide debate about the responsibilities of talk show hosts and the treatment of guests. Kimmel's ratings fell sharply in the weeks that followed, while Pitt's reputation was strengthened by his measured reaction to such a vicious attack. The confrontation became a defining moment, underscoring the importance of respect and professionalism in entertainment and proving that audiences still recognize decency when they see it.